Part 1. The Horse with Nowhere to Go. The first time the horse appeared, it was just after sunrise. The light was soft, brushing the edges of the pine trees like a painter's first strokes on canvas. A layer of mist hovered low over the field behind the Taylor farmhouse. Everything looked still except for the silhouette standing by the back fence. A horse. No bridle. No saddle. Just a chestnut mare with a white blaze down her nose and eyes that carried something deeper than most people were ready for. She stood motionless, her ears flicking slightly. Watching. And then, as silently as she came, she turned and disappeared into the woods. An uninvited visitor. Abigail Taylor was the first to see her. She was 67, widowed, with 2 grown children who had moved across the country and only called on holidays. She lived alone now. Tended to her garden. Fed the birds. Read romance novels and old mysteries by the window. When she saw the mare that first morning, she did not move. Just stared through the glass with the stillness of someone who knew when to be quiet. She whispered aloud, "Where did you come from?" The horse did not respond. But she came back the next day. And the day after that. The town whispers. Millstone, Kentucky was not the kind of place people passed through without reason. It was all backroads and gravel turns, with 1 gas station, 1 diner, and more stories than streetlights. When word got around that a lone horse had been seen near Abigail Taylor's house, folks started asking questions. Was she lost? Wild? Had someone dumped her out there like an unwanted dog? Sheriff Bill Rayner drove out to take a look. "She's healthy," he said, "but skittish. No brand. No tags. No microchip. Looks like she keeps coming back to your yard." Abigail nodded. "I know. She yours?" "No," Abigail said softly. "But I think she's trying to tell me something." Feeding a stranger. By the end of the first week, Abigail had left out a bucket of water and a few carrots. She was not expecting the horse to take them. But she did. Every piece. And then stayed just a little longer. She never crossed the fence. Never came too close. Just stood there watching the house with the patience of someone waiting for a door to open. One morning, Abigail walked outside in her robe, stood on the porch, and asked, "Are you looking for someone?" The mare blinked. Then turned and walked back into the woods. Ghost of the pasture. People started calling her the ghost mare. Kids came on bikes, trying to catch a glimpse. Someone posted a blurry photo on Facebook. And every morning, there she was always near Abigail's back fence. Until one day, she did not come. And the silence that followed was heavier than expected. Abigail sat on her porch that afternoon, her eyes scanning the tree line. She waited. Until dusk. But no horse came. She stood up, dusted off her hands, and whispered, "That is enough." Then she did something she had not done in years. She walked to the edge of the woods and started calling. "Come on, girl. It's okay. I'm here." The return. She did not hear anything at first. But then, hooves. Slow. Measured. Careful. The mare stepped out from behind a thicket of trees, her head low, her steps cautious. Abigail held her breath. This time, the mare did not stop at the fence. She walked right up to it. And waited. Abigail stepped forward, heart pounding, and stretched out her hand. The mare did not pull away. She leaned in. Touched her nose to Abigail's palm. And stayed there. Still. Silent. As if she had finally come home. The photograph. The next morning, Abigail pulled an old box from her closet. Inside were letters, photographs, and pieces of her life she had not touched in over a decade. She took out one picture, a boy in his 20s, wearing riding boots, grinning atop a young chestnut mare with a crooked white blaze. Her hand trembled. She whispered his name. Ben. Then she looked out the window and saw the mare waiting. Part 2. The name she knew. The photo sat on the kitchen table all night. Abigail could not stop looking at it. The edges were yellowed. The ink in the date stamp had faded, but she knew exactly when it was taken, August 14th, 12 years ago. The last day Ben rode before he left. Her only son. Gone longer than he ever should have been. She held the photo in one hand and a steaming cup of black tea in the other. Outside the window, the mare stood by the fence again. She was closer now. Abigail could see the white blaze clearly. It ran crooked down her face, ending just above the nostrils. Just like the filly Ben had raised from birth. A filly named Luna. 12 years of silence. Ben had left after his 22nd birthday. Not out of rebellion, not for college, not even out of anger. He had left because he was broken. The accident with his father had left scars that no one could see. Not even Abigail. Her husband, Frank, had fallen from the barn roof during repairs. Ben had blamed himself. He was supposed to be helping, but had stepped away for just 1 minute. Frank died before the ambulance arrived. Ben never forgave himself. And Luna, barely 3 years old then, had wandered the property for days after he disappeared, calling out, searching. Until she, too, vanished. The vet arrives. The town vet, Dr. Ellie Camden, drove out that morning after Maria from the diner called and said, "You better come take a look at that horse. She is not just passing through." When Ellie pulled up, Luna was standing in her usual spot, alert but calm. "She's not feral," Ellie said immediately. "Clean hooves. Healthy coat. She's been cared for." Abigail stood beside her on the porch, arms folded. "She won't leave." Ellie walked slowly toward the mare with an outstretched hand. Luna lowered her head and allowed the touch. No brand. No chip. But... Ellie ran her hand down Luna's shoulder, over a faint, star-shaped scar near the haunch. She looked at Abigail. "I treated a horse with this same scar over a decade ago." Abigail's voice cracked. "Luna." Ellie stepped back, stunned. "This is Ben's horse?" "I think so." The journal. That evening, Abigail returned to the box of memories. Beneath the photographs and postcards was an old leather-bound notebook. Ben's writing journal. She opened it, the scent of dust and hay wafting up like ghosts. Each page held notes in his handwriting, care routines, training schedules, feeding habits. One entry caught her eye. "Luna responds best to voice. Soft tones. Whistles. She remembers melodies." Abigail's eyes welled. She stood, opened the back door, and stepped into the golden light of dusk. The air was cool. The breeze carried the scent of pine and distant rain. She began to hum. A lullaby. The one she used to sing to Ben when he was small. Soft. Slow. Familiar. Luna raised her head. Her ears twitched. And then, she walked toward the house. The porch visit. It was the first time Luna had crossed the fence. She climbed the small hill to the edge of the porch and stood beside the steps. Abigail stood still. Then slowly, carefully, reached into the pail beside the rocking chair and pulled out an apple. She held it out. Luna sniffed. Bit. Chewed. Stayed. Abigail sat down, exhaled slowly, and whispered, "Where did you go, girl?" Luna blinked slowly. And stayed. The letter. The next morning, the mail arrived late. Inside the small stack was a thick envelope from a lawyer in Missouri. Abigail opened it with a kitchen knife. Inside, a brief letter and a document. The letter read, "Dear Mrs. Taylor, your son, Benjamin Taylor, listed your name as next of kin on his employment forms at Shady Ridge Ranch. We regret to inform you that he passed away 3 months ago due to complications from pneumonia. In his final days, he made specific requests regarding a horse named Luna. She was released onto free pasture bordering national forest land as per his written request. We are shocked to learn that she may have found her way home. Please contact us at the number below." The collapse. Abigail sat at the kitchen table in silence for several minutes. Then she dropped the letter. And the grief hit her like a wave. Not loud. Not violent. Just endless. Her head fell into her hands. Her shoulders shook. She did not cry often. Had not for years. But this cracked something that had hardened too long. She had wondered. Feared. But never had confirmation. Until now. He had died. And somehow, Luna had come back. All the way. To her. The burden she carried. The next time she fed Luna, Abigail spoke softly. "I did not know. I am so sorry. You should not have had to carry that burden." Luna rested her chin on the porch railing. Her eyes closed. Not asleep. But at peace. Abigail touched her gently. "You were the last part of him." The mare did not move. The wind picked up. And for the first time in 12 years, Abigail felt something return to her body. Not just sorrow. But presence. Purpose. Part 3. The Town That Remembered. The story of Luna spread through Millstone faster than wildfire on a dry hillside. By the end of the week, the local newspaper ran a front-page article with the headline, "Lost Horse Returns Home 12 Years Later, Family's Heartbreaking Story Unfolds." People started showing up at the edge of Abigail's fence. Some just to catch a glimpse. Some to offer condolences. A few to leave carrots, apples, or simple handwritten notes folded neatly with the words, "She remembered. So did we." The quiet hill behind the farmhouse was no longer forgotten. And neither was Abigail. The girl with the braids. Her name was Rosie. She was 8 years old, with tangled red braids and a jacket 3 sizes too big. She had read the article with her grandmother, then begged to visit every day after school. At first, Abigail was unsure. She had kept to herself for so long. Opening the porch door to visitors, especially children, felt foreign. But Rosie was different. She approached slowly, hands behind her back, with wide eyes and quiet steps. Luna stood by the fence like she always did, calm and unmoved. Rosie said softly, "She looks like she's waiting for someone." Abigail nodded. "She is." A whispered invitation. It was Rosie who broke the silence. "Can I touch her?" Abigail looked at Luna, who had not flinched, even as Rosie came within arm's reach. "Hold out your hand. No sudden moves. Let her decide." Rosie nodded and held out her small, open palm. Luna took one step forward, then another, and pressed her nose into Rosie's fingers. The child giggled quietly. "She's soft." Abigail smiled. "She used to belong to someone with gentle hands." She remembers. The memory that returned. That night, Abigail opened another letter from the lawyer in Missouri. This one included copies of Ben's journal entries during his time at the ranch. His handwriting was more mature, the edges of each word more grounded. But one page stopped her cold. "Luna gets restless when I hum. She walks in circles until I hit the right notes. I think she remembers Mom's voice more than mine." Abigail folded the page gently and held it to her chest. The song she had hummed, it was not just memory. It was a tether. The gate swings open. On the 10th day of Luna's return, Abigail opened the back gate. Not all the way. Just enough for Luna to pass through. The mare hesitated. Then stepped forward. Not with fear. With certainty. She walked slowly up the small rise toward the porch and rested beside the steps. Abigail sat beside her. Neither spoke. But something old and sacred passed between them. A town that needed healing. That weekend, the mayor of Millstone called Abigail. "We've had 5 reporters ask about your story. National outlets. News vans." Abigail sighed. "I do not want cameras here." "I understand. But we had another idea." "What kind?" "The town fair is next month. We would like to dedicate it to Ben and Luna." Abigail was quiet. "I don't want a spotlight." "This wouldn't be for you," the mayor said gently. "It would be for the people who feel forgotten. Who needs something to come home to." That made her pause. Luna looked at her. As if to say, "It's time." The portrait. Rosie brought a drawing one afternoon. It was crayon on construction paper, Luna standing on a hill, Abigail in a rocking chair, birds flying above. But in the background was a boy. Tall, with gentle eyes. Rosie pointed. "That's Ben. Right?" Abigail's voice caught in her throat. "Yes, sweet girl. That's Ben. I think she came back to find you," Rosie said. "But also to remind you he never left." The fairground decision. Abigail stood at the edge of the old fairground 2 weeks later. She watched as volunteers set up booths, hay bales, and a small stage. There would be music, food, a local auction. And a new event called Luna's Circle, a quiet area where children could meet Luna and learn how to brush her, feed her, and sit with her in silence. The town did not want a spectacle. They wanted a sanctuary. Abigail whispered to the mayor, "Let's do it." But no speeches. He smiled. "You just being there is enough." The bond deepens. Luna now slept beside the porch most nights. Abigail kept the gate open. She laid down blankets and a heat lamp nearby. Rosie came every day after school and brought a new apple or brushed Luna's mane with small, focused hands. "Has she ever let anyone ride her?" she asked. Abigail shook her head. "Not since Ben." "I don't need to ride," Rosie said. "Just being near her makes me feel less noisy." Abigail smiled. "She has that effect." The journal's final page. Abigail sat in bed one night with Ben's original writing journal. The last page held a note she had never seen before. "If anything ever happens to me, and Luna finds her way back, tell her I'm okay. And tell Mom I never stopped trying to come home." Abigail traced the words with her fingers. Outside, the wind shifted. Luna whinnied once, low and long. And Abigail cried again. Not from grief, but from the kind of love that remembers even after everything else forgets. Part 4. Where everyone could see her. The morning of the Millstone Fall Fair broke clear in gold. Dew clung to the grass like polished glass. The sky stretched white and pale, and the breeze carried the scent of cinnamon, roasted peanuts, and firewood from the booths being set up. The fairgrounds buzzed with quiet purpose. Abigail Taylor stood near the edge of the field, her hands folded loosely in front of her. Beside her stood Luna. No reins. No rope. Just trust. The mare had followed her from the house, down the path, across the open stretch toward town. And now she stood among noise, laughter, music, completely still. The sanctuary tent. The event organizers had set up a white tent at the far end of the field, beneath a tall oak tree. A hand-painted sign read, "Luna's Circle, a quiet space to heal." The rules were simple. No shouting. No selfies. No running. Just small groups, one at a time, allowed to meet Luna, brush her coat, feed her soft apples, and sit near her in stillness. Rosie arrived early with her grandmother and helped arrange small hay bales in a circle. "This is like a church for feelings," she said, adjusting a bale. Abigail nodded. "That's exactly what it is." The first visitors. The first guests were 3 children from a nearby foster home. They were quiet, guarded, uncertain. One boy stood back until Luna walked to him on her own. He froze. Then laid a hand on her neck. The stillness between them became its own kind of language. After that, the stories poured in. A woman who had lost her husband 2 months earlier sat beside Luna for 10 full minutes, saying nothing. When she finally spoke, it was to whisper, "She sees what I'm holding." A teenager with severe anxiety hugged Luna around the neck, then said, "I haven't touched anything living in weeks." Luna stood calm through it all. As if she had always known her purpose. A fair unlike any other. While the rest of the fairground exploded with colors, rides, and blue ribbon contests, Luna's circle became something else entirely. People lined up not to gawk, but to feel. There were no reporters. Abigail had requested it that way. The mayor honored her wish. "This is not a story," he said. "It's a space." Abigail spent most of the afternoon standing beside Luna, watching as child after child, adult after adult, found something in her presence they did not know they needed. Healing. Permission. Stillness. The speech she never planned. It was late afternoon when the mayor approached the tent with a small microphone. "We would like to end the day with a word from Abigail Taylor," he said gently. Abigail stepped back, shaking her head. "I do not." But Luna brushed against her shoulder. And Rosie whispered, "They're not asking you to talk. They're asking you to share." So Abigail took the mic. Her hands trembled slightly. She looked out at the crowd, neighbors, friends, strangers, kids, farmers, teachers. And then she said, "She brought him back to me. My son, Ben, left this town 12 years ago. He was hurting. He never stopped trying to make up for a mistake he believed he caused. He didn't come home. Not in the way I hoped. But one day, this mare walked out of the woods and stood by my fence. Every day, she came back. Until I opened the gate. And she walked in like she had been coming home all along. She did not bring me comfort. She brought me the truth. That love does not vanish. That connection survives time, guilt, and silence. She brought him back to me. And now, she brings peace to others, too. All I did was make space for her. And somehow, she made space for all of us." The standing silence. There was no applause. Only a long, still moment. Dozens of people standing shoulder to shoulder, eyes damp, hearts full. And then, from the back, a small voice said, "Thank you." It was one of the foster kids. That broke the silence. Not with sound, but with warmth. Abigail stepped away from the mic. Luna walked beside her. And the people parted like water, letting her pass through as if she had always belonged to them. That night on the porch. Back home, the porch light flickered softly. Luna stood near the bottom step, chewing slowly. Rosie sat beside her, drawing another picture, this time of the whole tent, with children in a circle, Abigail in the center, and Luna shining like a lantern. "I think she fixed something in me," Rosie said. "She's been fixing things in me, too," Abigail replied. Then Rosie asked, "Do you think Ben knows?" Abigail looked up at the stars. And said quietly, "I think he sent her the invitation." The next morning, Abigail found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a note from the regional therapy center just 2 towns over. "We heard about Luna. Would you consider bringing her once a month? We have children and adults who cannot speak, but we believe she will understand them. Abigail folded the letter. Luna stood in the pasture, blinking in the morning light. I guess we are not done yet, Abigail whispered. Part 5. She came home for all of us. The leaves turned red before anyone noticed. Summer's heat softened. The air thinned and crisped. Luna's coat began to thicken, and the mornings carried the smell of earth and old rain. Abigail stood on the porch each dawn, holding her coffee with both hands, watching as Luna wandered the edge of the field, then returned, always returning. Some mornings, Rosie arrived early, sitting in the grass beside Luna with her sketchpad in her lap, humming to herself, the same lullaby Abigail had once sung to her son. I think she knows the song now, Rosie said. Abigail smiled. I think she always did. The first visit to the center. They made the trip to the therapy center just before the first frost. Abigail drove with Luna in the trailer, nervous but calm. I do not know if this is what you want, she said softly to Luna, but I think it is what you're meant for. When they arrived, a dozen staff members were waiting. Most had tears in their eyes before the gate was even down. She's more beautiful than the article said, one whispered. A boy in a wheelchair reached for her immediately, his hands trembling. Luna stepped close, lowering her head to meet his. He giggled. The boy had not spoken in 3 months. But that day, he whispered, warm. And his mother wept. A new rhythm. Once a month turned into every other week. Then weekly. Each visit, Luna gave something: stillness, trust, light. She was never trained for this. She simply knew. Children with trauma clung to her like gravity. Veterans with haunted eyes sat with her in silence for hours. Once, a nurse said to Abigail, "This horse listens harder than most people I know." Abigail answered, she had to lose everything before she found her voice. The letter she finally wrote. One quiet night, Abigail sat at her desk with a blank piece of paper in front of her and wrote, Dear Ben, I waited too long to write this. I kept thinking you would come back. I never expected it would be her who came home instead. I understand now that you sent her. That somehow, someway, in your final days, you made sure she would find her way back to the place you could not. She saved me. And now she saves others. You never stopped being my son. And she never stopped being your messenger. I forgive you for leaving. I hope you forgive me for not finding you sooner. Love always. Mom. She placed the letter in an envelope and tucked it into Luna's saddlebag during their next visit to the hilltop where Ben used to ride. Then she let the wind carry the ashes of it into the sky. The day she did not show up. It happened on a Thursday. Rosie arrived after school, as usual, but the porch was quiet. No coffee mug. No rocking chair creak. No Abigail. Luna stood near the porch step, unmoving. Rosie called out. Nothing. She opened the screen door, walked in, and found her. Abigail was in her chair. Eyes closed. Peaceful. Her hand still rested on Ben's journal, a pen beside it. The last thing she had written was a note for Rosie. Asterisk, you were the daughter I never knew I needed. Keep drawing. Keep loving. Keep showing up for her. She belongs to you now, asterisk. The farewell. The funeral was quiet. Held at the same fairground where Luna's circle had once opened its arms to the broken. The mayor spoke. So did the vet. And Rosie, barely 10 now, read the letter Abigail had left her. Luna stood by the casket the entire time, unmoving, wearing a garland of rosemary and lavender around her neck. When the ceremony ended, Rosie led Luna out of the crowd and onto the hilltop trail Ben had once walked daily. They stood in silence at the top. And the wind answered. The return ride. For the first time in her life, Rosie climbed onto Luna's back. There was no saddle. No bridle. Only trust. She rode slowly, the way Ben used to. And as she passed through the town, people came out of their homes. They did not cheer. They did not shout. They placed their hands over their hearts. A girl and a horse, carrying the legacy of a man who had once disappeared, and a mother who waited until the end. Now moving forward, together. The final journal entry. Rosie kept Ben's journal. One night, under her blanket, she turned to the back and began a new page in her own handwriting. Asterisk, she was not just a horse. She was a message. A compass. A reminder that what you lose can still find its way back. Abigail gave her love. Ben gave her memory. And now, she gives me purpose. I will keep the gate open. Just like they did, asterisk. The porch light. A month later, the porch light at Abigail's house flickered on one evening. There was no one home. But Luna walked up the hill. Rosie had lit it. Just to keep the path warm. The mare stood by the step, looking out over the valley, her ears twitching in the breeze. A girl sat on the swing, sketchpad in her lap, humming the same melody from years before. Some stories never end. They just change writers.